My name's Rosie. I'm the events coordinator here at Readers. This is the second in-person event, maybe the third in-person event that I've had in 2 years. So forgive me if I'm very rusty. So one of the things that I've always really loved about Sonoma is that there's just this wonderful sense of community. We were trying to go, okay, how many people will come? Mary's done events at the Vintage House. Like, what should we prepare for? And it's so lovely to see everybody here and everybody supporting each other. It's just a really great feeling. Another really nice thing about Sonoma is that I've always felt like, if you're lucky, you get to grow older, if you are lucky. And people will say things like, oh, to me particularly, they'll say like, oh, one day you'll be old and you won't like this and this and this. And I tend to think, well, you're pretty lucky if you get to keep going and you have anything at all. But then I also think about it every time I have to help my boss, Andy, with his email. And I go, how scary is that? What's it going to look like in, however many years when the email is in the inside of my brain and some 20-something has to tell me like, oh, this is how you log in, stupid idiot. Like, that's going to be really hard. And I've always admired the people in my life that I see that are dealing with this in a very dignified and graceful and realistic way. So that's the long-winded way of saying that Dr. Mary Flett is part of how you can learn how to do that and how to contain that sense of like, well, getting old is hard, and getting old in a world where technology is changing every 6 months is hard, but there are ways to deal with it that it aren't going to hurt you or hurt your community, and ways that you can enjoy yourself in being old. And she knows a lot more about this than I do. Obviously, she's written 3 books. And if you guys could just give her a nice round of applause, tell us all about it.
We're in good hands, aren't we? With the future.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosie. Golly, it's good to be out.
Yes.
I love old people. I mean, this is like true confessions. How many of you grew up knowing that old people were really wonderful sources of information? Yeah. How many of you grew up never having known a person over 30? Come on, we all said that, right? Anybody over 30 was ancient. Right? When did you learn you were old? Yeah. Thank you. Say it loud and say it proud. Not there yet. So tonight, what I'm really going to be addressing is how to age better and age well. There's lots of words out there to talk about growing old in this country. None of them are very good. And for a writer, that's a real challenge. Okay? I was fortunate to be married to a man who was 20 years older than I was. He lived a different life than I did, but we shared deep love for one another. We also could tell each other stories from a very different perspective. My cousin was in Sonoma, which is the reason why my husband and I moved up here. He lived on 5th Street West, and after his partner died, my husband and I moved up here because as an older gay man, he did not have a large community. And he was challenged, and we were concerned about him because he was family and wanted to be near him. His next door neighbor was one of the most remarkable human beings I've ever known. Her name was Rebecca Latimer. I don't know if any of you knew her. Rebecca was the inspiration. She actually asked me to help her edit the final book that she wrote, the title of which you cannot imagine anything more specific. You're not old until you're 90, semicolon. Best to be prepared, however. And she absolutely lived that. She was a student of spirituality. She was a world traveler. She had grown up in the East Coast, and still had her New Hampshire accent at 90 years old. Walked every day. The only thing that finally slowed her down was that she got macular degeneration. And her love in life was writing. She had volumes of journals she had kept since she was a child. And when she could no longer see her writing, her sons very kindly got her a tape recorder, but she couldn't figure all of that out. And she finally came to a point, and we had a long conversation about this, where she just decided that the quality of life that she had left in front of her was not worth prolonging. And in her very matter-of-fact, back east way, she said, I'm going to stop eating, I'm going to stop drinking, and I'm just going to die. Now, for those of you that are familiar with some of these approaches to our final days, Rebecca was a cutting edge. This was a number of years ago. And she was concerned that her children who were in their 70s, her children would be upset with this decision. But so she sat them down, had a long conversation with them, and they initially were not happy with this, because who would want to give up a mom like that? But they finally came to terms with it. And now you have to understand, this is a footnote I should have put in a little bit before this. Every night before Rebecca went to bed, she would have herself a little glass of sherry. Okay? What all really elegant women do, right? Don't we all do that? Of course, in this death process, you can't drink, and you can't eat anything. And literally, the day before she died, she sat up, all energy left, and she said, I want my sherry. And we're all around her going, oh, no, Rebecca, if you have your sherry, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. I want my sherry. Well, by God, we gave her her sherry. And she died peacefully the next day with her sons there. And all of us mourned her loss. From that moment on, I changed my dissertation topic, which I had been working on for ages, to values in aging, to looking at how our values and the morals and the beliefs that we have, that we grow up with, inform the choices that we make, give us courage as we grow old, and hopefully allow us to open our hearts to this most remarkable period of our lives. Rosie was right. Not everybody gets to grow old. But for those of us that do, we hopefully are going to find it a challenging but embraceable experience. Okay? So let me get back to what I said about aging better and aging well. I had a hard time trying to figure out what I was going to call this aging research I was doing, because back in those days, we were talking about people who aged successfully. And I really had a hard time with that, because what was the alternative? I'm sorry, Doc, I've failed aging. I am no longer able to age successfully, so I'll just kind of make a mess of it and see what you want to call that. So aging successfully was not going to be anything that I was interested in. And then there was this whole thing of being called a senior. I graduated from high school in I was a senior for a whole year. 4 years later, it only took me 4, I graduated from college. I was a senior for another year. I have 2 seniors in me. Is this third senior going to take a year? Okay. No, don't like that. Okay. Then how about old? I'm just old. Well, that's not very accurate. That's not very precise, is it? And yet, we all fall into this fascinating chronology. Well, actually chronological. But if you are 65, is there some magical transformation that happens to you? You were 64 and 364 days old yesterday, but now you're 65 and you are old. So, aging better, aging well. Okay. The 3 things that are really key to age better and age well are valuing ourselves, coming to appreciate the history that we bring with us, the legacies that we have, and what we want to carry forward and what we want to share with others. Staying connected. And oh my God, haven't we learned that skill during this pandemic? The value of friendship, the extraordinary support that we can get, even though we may not be in physical proximity with one another, but just knowing that somebody is out there and caring. And then, because I took a lot of classes on how to market my books. Savvy, let me tell you. Essential skills. Buy that one, okay. It's all in this book, folks. You have all the essential skills. Well, I thought I'd start with a reading from Essential Skills first, just to kind of get us in the mood of what I think is the most essential of skills. All of these, by the way, are blogs that I've written for the last 4 years. I was talking the other day to a bunch of... How many of you are writers? Yeah, come on, be honest. How many of you are writers? You don't have to be published. Okay. So for those of us that have this disease, the challenge with writing is to find just the right length. So I was thinking, who would be a good blogger of all the great writers? Dostoevsky would not have been a good blogger. Okay. Gustave Flaubert, do you know the story of Flaubert and Madame Bovary? I mean, he was like 2 when he started writing it, and he was 80, because every word was just torture. Of course, they were beautiful words, but he got them all. He would not be a blogger. Ernest Hemingway would have been a great blogger. Okay. Now, it's not all inflated ego on my part. I don't consider myself amongst all of those great writers, but I do write a great blog, and I'm not ashamed to say that. And it's gotten better over the 4 years that I've been doing it because, and if any of you have taken a writing course, I just got out of my own way. And instead of writing what I thought was supposed to be the way to write, now mind you, I've written in almost every kind of genre there is out there because I can't hold a job, so I've been able to find different ways of writing, and wrote copy for an advertising agency, wrote really boring legal stuff for a while, wills and trusts. But I finally found my right way, my voice to write, and it's about 1,100 words. That's about once a week. So here's one I wrote way back, historical, in June of 2018, before we knew all of this stuff. It's called I Am Enough. Knowing you are enough at any age is important, but it is foundational to how you experience yourself as you reach 60, 70, 80, or 90. How you measure your self-worth dictates the kind of old age you experience. Your sense of self-worth affects every area of aging, including how engaged you are with life, your capacity for dealing with illness and loss, your memory, your spiritual and religious practices and beliefs, your concerns and worries about your loved ones, and your fears about dying. I'm not talking about pride or egotism here. I'm talking about seeing yourself as an important contributor to your friends and family, a legacy builder for those who will come after you, a curator of the beliefs and values of those who came before. Being enough is not a static goal. It requires constant adjustment to the needs of those who depend on you. It requires recalibrating based on the changes in the world you live in. Knowing you are enough requires insight and reflection on the consequences of decisions made sometimes in haste or without sufficient information. It goes on for a while, but let me jump. Self-worth. It has been my privilege to work with aging adults for most of my life. I have gained insight into the challenges that aging brings because my family members, patients, and friends have shared their journeys with me. What they taught me was, regardless of my background, education, religious or spiritual belief, unless I valued myself first, others will not value me in the ways I need to be valued. And their valuing me has important implications as I get older. Essential skill. How many of you are comfortable with saying, I am valued? Yeah. I invite you to really think about this. We spend so much time as we grow older worried about our financial assets, where we're investing, what our return of investment is. Your self-worth is worth preserving and investing in. And so is my book. By the way, it's available tonight for you. Yes. So I said connecting is another important skill that we need to have. This will give you a flavor of some of the other pieces in the book. This is a blog on a new name for old age. I kind of gave you my little riff about that, but we'll try this. My proposal is that we call this time of our lives Elderhood. Just as we transition from childhood to adulthood, Elderhood can encompass a broad range of ages, functioning, capacities, and tasks. To adopt Erik Erikson's model, tasks in elderhood might include transitioning from doing to being. For example, going from working to retiring. Adapting to changing roles such as parenting, grandparenting. Managing isolation and loneliness, including changes in status like being partnered and unpartnered as a result of death, separation, or disease. And coming to terms with mortality. Elderhood is not a target or goal. Rather, it is a phase that may encompass many years chronologically, or may consist of transformation of body, mind, and soul within a short period. Within these boundaries will be found individuals who are demonstrated skills at adapting to new circumstances, new ideas, and new ways of being. There will also be those who are less skilled and find themselves preferring to preserve their rituals and habits acquired over a lifetime. There will be those filled with wisdom and compassion, and those who no longer know who they are or who have succumbed to bitterness. While research may further define and clarify all the elements to be found in elderhood, it is up to those of us who are exploring these new frontiers to claim this territory for our own. So, I am claiming elderhood as my name for growing old, and I would delight in hearing your thoughts and ideas. The last piece of reading I'm going to do, and then I'm going to open it up because y'all have much more exciting things to talk about than me just shouting at you here, is the effect that COVID has had on us. This pandemic, I think, has, that wonderful Chinese character of being an opportunity, and I can't even remember what the other one is, but I've chosen to have this be the opportunity. I have found, first and foremost, that, and don't tell anybody this, I really enjoy being alone. All those fears of, well, what'll I do if I have to spend an afternoon without being able to go shopping or play in the park or go wine tasting or all those other things that everybody should come to the Sonoma for. Don't get me wrong. I didn't have to. And COVID happened at a time in my career when I had made the decision to retire, and I was looking at this transitioning between doing and being. And oh man, I'm a doer. I'm such a doer. But I really enjoy the being. Just the other day, I was doing a Zoom. Don't we all do Zooms, right? So I was doing a Zoom thing, and afterwards, I just felt so exhausted. And I realized that I could take a nap. This new pace that COVID has invited us to participate in, willingly or I think can and will be one of the most transformational events that has happened in the world in a long time. For those of us that have lived through other events that have been transformational, I think we have the opportunity to really kind of pick out what's important and underline that and put it in bold and make sure that those who are coming after us really do understand it. Not that we won't make the same mistake again, because that just seems to be what human beings do. We repeat and learn and repeat and forget and repeat and learn and repeat and but so that we can be a little bit more open-hearted about what it is that we've experienced, and maybe not be quite as judgmental about why others are not able to act in ways that I want them to. And just accept the fact that change is truly inevitable, and the only control we have over it is how we choose to engage with it. I wish I could say that that was all my own wisdom, because then you'd really be paying a lot of money. But the truth of the matter is that this is wisdom that's been available for centuries. It is a legacy that we all have access to. But the excitement is in rediscovering it and then claiming it as our own. So this is a piece I wrote on finding purpose and meaning in a pandemic. Renegotiating reality. The ways in which we interact are needing to be renegotiated because of COVID-19. These negotiations involve physical space and psychological space, as well as redefining intimacy. All aspects of social interaction are open to review. Do we shake hands? Do we bow? Is texting sufficient? Do we need visual contact? Is 6 feet enough if I'm walking? Do I need more space if I'm running? How many seats need to be left unoccupied in theaters, arenas, and public transportation systems to ensure I'm not spreading or inhaling droplets? How do I read a person whose face is covered? How can I trust someone? What rights do I have if someone unintentionally exposes me to the virus? What responsibilities do I have to ensure I don't expose others? Who decides whose rights are more important? There will always be those who are unwilling to comply or go along with what is asked of them, and there will always be those who feel they must enforce the rules. Somewhere in the middle are the great masses of us who long for compassionate leadership while forgetting that this is initiated from within. We can turn the tide. We can heal many of our own wounds. We can always find ways to better understand ourselves and each other, and we need each other. I find myself looking for philosophies that say there is meaning in all that is happening. I come to terms with what seems dire by opening myself to feel the feelings, to look past the immediate, open my emotional and psychological apertures, and see what else is happening. And here is what I see. The sun is out for a longer period of time each day. New growth is showing up on trees and in the vineyards. Flowers are emerging from the ground and their buds are opening. Folks are reaching out to each other in ways they haven't in a long time. People are changing how they do things, are observing social distancing, wearing masks, washing their hands. In spite of vitriol and hyperbole, regular folks are stepping up and checking on their neighbors, shopping for others who can't get to the store, making masks and posting fun videos and jokes online. There seems to be an irrevocable pull to humanity in most of us. Not all, but most. And for this moment, that is sufficient to give me hope. Now, I have been accused over the years of being a cockeyed optimist, naive, and frankly, too hopeful. I admit that these are preferred states of mind for me. I can certainly entertain a few more dire view of things, and I have been known to make cynical comments. But this isn't my preferred stance, and such thoughts don't provide me with the strength I know I need to survive. I'm choosing to find purpose and meaning in this pandemic. I'm connecting with what I believe is essential to my humanity, understanding the consequences of my actions, accepting responsibility for how I share time, space, and resources, and coming to terms with the inevitability of change that I have no control over, and the inevitability of my own death. For today, I am grateful that I am enjoying good health, the love of friends and family, having food to eat, and a safe place to sleep. May this be true for all beings. If not today, then someday soon. And I'm so grateful for you being here tonight and for Reader's Books. Now is the chance for you to talk. Please, somebody say something.
What would you like to hear from us?
Oh my God, the check's in the mail, Kath. You know what I'm really interested in? Truly, this is because this is what's happening today. We're at this point now where we're having to make choices ourselves as opposed to the CDC telling us what to do about wearing masks. How are you feeling? Are you feeling afraid? Are you more engaged? Are you wanting to break free and run naked through the park?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. How is this, Kathy? You get to. Oh, please.
We actually just decided to do some traveling, which we really haven't done, in a big way. So I think that's a real shift, to be thinking about going someplace pretty far away.
Yeah.
So, and I, 6 months ago, a year ago, no way. So I feel it, a transition going on.
And I'm going to tie in obviously something here because this way you'll buy the books, but that is an essential skill, right? It's knowing that you can and are willing to do something that feels a little
it does
wobbly.
It is a little wobbly, and gives us a little pause, but I think it's part of recognizing that and then pushing through still.
Yeah.
So. Risk.
Well worth taking. Anybody else questions or comments, observations?
I have to say I've gotten quite attached to Zoom. I do a lot of meetings and trainings and talks and everything.
Absolutely.
I will need to remember that later.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Please.
Well, it seems like your books came out at the right time for me because when I heard that they were at Readers, I came right over and bought all three. And then I read them 1, 2, 3. And simultaneously with the COVID thing and living with myself alone for the first time in a long time, it was very much of a support system, and I was reading about myself and the changes that I was making. I was right along with Mary, and because I know you, I thought, oh, well, this is okay because Mary says it is, or something like that. Does that make sense? It was very, very good timing on yours and my part to unite in that way. And of course, there was a lot of information in your books, so I would read just a little bit, and then I just read a little bit more, and so it was feeding me as the isolation, but I didn't feel isolated.
You know what? One of the pieces of feedback I've gotten from other readers is because these are blog length, it really is like a sampler. Remember those old samplers? Not the Whitman, because they were always like way too old, but a good sampler that you can just take a bite out of it and then you can put it down. And if I need to make a pitch for buying sales or for something to hook you into doing that, it really is eminently easy. Pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down, and it will nourish you. I will guarantee that. I will guarantee that. Anybody else? Comments, please.
I learned that I can get to the end of a perfectly happy day and realize I haven't left my home. And it's
Yes.
nice. And I never thought I would ever experience a day like that. I wanted to be on the go, and it's a peaceful feeling.
And it really is an essential skill. I mean, I'm not trying to hook for that, but pacing at this stage of life, I think it just offers so much more for us. Well, you had a.
I'm a caregiver for my elderly parents, and I have found that since I've started this, I've been doing it for about 7 or 8 years now, that my attitude and feelings about aging have shifted, and not in a positive way as a result of caring for my parents. My mother has dementia. And I'm wondering if you could comment along those lines.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you weren't all able to hear what she was saying, she was talking about her attitude because of the burdens and, I'm sorry, I'm assuming it's a burden, but the demands that are put on you for caring for a mother with dementia. The two things have come up for me. Number one is that how woefully ill prepared we are for caring for this generation. We do not have sufficient caregivers. And before I came over here tonight, and this is going to make you feel even worse, they're predicting, they being the federal government, is predicting that 25% of trained caregivers will be leaving the profession. The burden for care, both generations older and generations younger, has fallen. And the truth of the matter is we don't pay, we don't value, and the demands that we are making on people to care for people are not resulting in better care. It's resulting in more poor health outcomes all around, abuse, which has risen through the roof, both child abuse and elder abuse, and really a loss of these extraordinary assets that we have that we're just not supporting. So that's on the social side. On the direct personal side, this notion that I need to be all things to a parent or to a child has hit reality head on. Individually, I cannot possibly care and meet the needs for someone who has chronic illness, chronic mental illness, substance use problems, is losing their memory or is unable to function. And there's nobody I can reach out to. So the isolation of the pandemic, on top of the isolation that goes with the stigma and the need, has been absolutely devastating. I wish I could say it's just in the United States, because that would be bad enough, but this is worldwide. So there is a malnourishment of the spirit. There is a chronic underfunding of health services as well as mental health services, which is my particular area. And what I learned from this is I have to ask, and I may not have somebody respond. And that's an existential crisis. I wish I could say your attitude was ill-founded, but it's not. It is realistic. And we have an opportunity. I mean, there's that character again. But we'd be here for another 6 hours if I got onto that platform. But maybe I'll write a book about that and come back.
Read it.
Please.
I really appreciate, your invitation, because it is an invitation, really. And I'd kind of like to step, going in this direction of, I've done a lot of women's groups in the past, and I feel like the word that you just used is malnourished. And I feel like we've all kind of taken several steps back.
Yeah.
The security that maybe we all once felt, that self-worth, is lacking, because I feel we are suffering.
Yes.
And we do really need that support. Yes. But yet, I think it's a good time.
This is about cross-pollination.
Yes.
We all have to be little bees,
Yes.
and we all have to find the brightest flowers, and then we just have to keep on buzzing.
Yes.
You have no idea, well, maybe you do, what the sound level of hundreds of thousands of elders with clear purpose can make.
Yeah.
These are things that we can do. It's not that we need Kathy and I are good friends here, and we were having a conversation the other day about, the pull to go out and march and hold up placards and do all the rest of that. And I pushed back on her. I said, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I did that. That's done. My job is to irritate people younger than I so much that they get up and do that work. Not that I can sit back and not do it, but because I have the capacity to hold the space until the change happens. And that's a spiritual belief system that comes from. So by all means, yes, let's cross-pollinate and let's just be buzzing like crazy.
I just like to say how much I've enjoyed reading your books. And one of the nourishing things that I can do all alone that I've appreciated for the last year is to read your blog. In case you don't know, every Sunday morning, it's like a ritual now. I read Mary's blog, and it's sometimes funny, it's informative, and very insightful. So I recommend that to you all, and thank you, Mary.
Well, thank you, Joe. There's another great writer who's got a great blog. Well, plug for Fran Meininger here.
Thank you. Have you noticed, since you've started writing, there are far more resources, far more organizations, far more writers, especially since the pandemic started, on the topic of aging, especially women aging. It's amazing what has exploded the last few years.
Yeah.
And even though it's digital, it's virtual, it is a support system for us, and if we can utilize it, it might be the impetus for something more interpersonal and intimate.
Absolutely.
But it's incredible what has happened.
Fran, tell them your blog.
My blog is The Years Beyond Youth.
Isn't that a great title? The Years Beyond Youth. It's juicy. When I've been doing this for a long time, right? Not just the writing piece, but working with older adults. And those of you who have been in that sphere for a while, you also understand this piece. I am somewhat resentful that people are just catching on. Because I've been out there screaming at the top of my lungs for a long time. And once I get past that piece of resentment, then it's competition. And it's like, wait a minute, you write better than I do, and you're getting more play than I am. So this is an internal personal growth opportunity, too, that we have.
So I actually have one last question. I am solidly a millennial, and a lot of people my age have difficulty thinking about growing older. Most people I know, if they have a retirement account, they're not paying attention to it because we did come of age in a time in which financial security was very, very difficult to plan for. But now, of course, we're looking ahead, and our parents are of an older generation. Is there anything that you think we can do to prepare ourselves to help older adults?
Oh my God, did she tee that up perfectly? The answer is yes. And it has to do with what I call emotional economics. So you're right. The world is going to end before your grandchildren live long enough to do it. You're not going to have enough money because we're all going to die and our houses are, but nothing's going to be like that little town in Japan that just has knit people in it. Here's the answer. I am enough. First of all, you have to value yourself. Okay. Secondly, you have to look at your belief that there is enough. Because it's a belief. Any of you in this room who have had to struggle to find money to pay for things, when you haven't been able to, you know that dollar or dime, or depending on what end of the spectrum you were at, that all of a sudden makes you Midas. And then when you have a lot of it, it's like, here, you do this. It's a belief. I have enough. Another belief, even subtler, there is enough. We are all inheritors of legacy providers who survived some of the worst things that have ever happened in this world. We have to believe there is enough and act on that. we can learn those lessons from generations that have gone before and who have survived the catastrophes we're imagining. Okay? And last but not least, we have to know and define for ourselves what is good enough. For you who are coming after, what may be good enough is going to be very different for my generation and for some of the people in this room. It's an individual conversation, but it's one that we can't just keep to ourselves, because the resources and the scarcity of resources that I consume will have a direct effect on you. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay, let's go sign books. Thank you very much.